I'm Helen Maria Biju, founder here at Embrace Minds. Today, I have the great pleasure of having Joe Seddon. Joe is the founder and CEO of the award-winning Zero Gravity, which is a digital social enterprise that connects the UK's most talented students with mentors, universities, and employers. Their platform ensures opportunities aren't the reserve of a privileged few, but instead supercharged across the UK by democratizing access to elite universities and careers. Since its inception in 2020, Zero Gravity has supported over 8,000 students into Russel Group. With him spearheading the team, Zero Gravity has won more than 30 awards. He's been named Forbes 30 Under 30, recognized with the Social Impact Award from the UK Prime Minister, and honored with the British Empire Medal by King Charles. Thank you so much, Joe, for joining us here at Embrace Minds.
Great to be on the podcast.
So tell us a little bit about your story. What made you become a voice of change?
So it all started 26 years ago, really, which was I was born in a small town in the UK called Morley in West Yorkshire. It's a sort of small suburban post-industrial market town between Leeds and Wakefield. And I grew up in a single parent background. My mum brought up three pesky children whilst balancing a job working in the National Health Service in the UK. I kind of just saw firsthand how difficult it was for students like me to defy the odds and overcome those barriers that prevent people from low opportunity areas getting access to kind of elite opportunities, whether it was financial anxiety, not having opportunities on your doorstep, not having an expansive professional network, going to a state school with limited resources, and all of these different things compound over the start of your life to lead to these huge gulfs in outcomes in terms of who goes to the top universities and who doesn't, who gets the best careers and who doesn't. And I was somebody who managed to sort of defy those odds, and I was able to go from a state school in the UK to winning a place at Oxford University. But I knew that there was many people like me who were just as talented, just as determined, and just as motivated, who were kind of let down by the current system. And I wanted to do something for those people to really break that link between background and opportunity. And that's how the idea of Zero Gravity was born. And I think the key thing alongside that vision was also the idea that technology could be used as a force for good to really democratize access to some of the most exclusive opportunities in the UK. That I'd grown up in a period where technology had disrupted so many facets of my life, whether it was Facebook and Instagram coming out when I was a teenager, to apps like Deliveroo and Uber, revolutionizing things from how you order a taxi to how you get food to your desk. And I thought that if we can use technology to solve those problems, maybe technology can have a role in solving one of the most deep, most entrenched, and most historic of all social problems, which is breaking that link between background and opportunity. So I kind of brought those two things together, my own personal experience and my belief in the power of technology. And that is what formed, I suppose, the centerpiece of the Zero Gravity vision.
Oh, wow, that's truly inspirational. So I heard you started off with Access Oxbridge, and that later turned out to be Zero Gravity. So could you walk us through that as well?
So when I graduated from university, I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur,
Mhm.
but I had no idea how to build a business because I didn't really have work who'd been successful entrepreneurs. So I was kind of making it up as I went along, in honesty. And I moved back home after university to Morley in West Yorkshire, where I grew up, and I built Zero Gravity from my childhood bedroom with the last 200 quid of my student loan. But as you correctly referenced, at the beginning, Zero Gravity was not the kind of organization you see today. I decided to get started just tackling one particular slice of this problem because I knew that I couldn't change the world overnight. I knew I didn't have enough resources or focus to be able to do all sorts of different things at the same time. So I just set out to tackle one particular slice of the problem, which was how do you get students from low opportunity areas into Oxford and Cambridge university. And the reason I picked that slice of the problem was A, I understood that ecosystem very well, and I'd been through that process myself. But B, because Oxford and Cambridge are two of the most exclusive, poshest universities, not just in the UK, but the world. I thought if we can prove this technology works in this context, that will be a fantastic proof of concept to then expand it to more universities and also looking at how do you get people access to careers as well. The first 18 months, I just kind of focused on the Oxbridge problem and the product worked. We had 50 students in the first year that I launched from low income backgrounds who won an offer to study at Oxford and Cambridge University. And it wasn't just about the statistics, but also the stories that came out of that as well. We had students who were the first person in their state school to go to Oxford or had come from a family where no one had been to university before. And they were willing to kind of talk about how the product had been transformational in their journey. And that created, I suppose, some fantastic case studies, which we were able to use to not only build the brand profile, but also attract investment, attract corporate partners. And that sort of created the domino effect that has got us to where we are today.
Oh wow, 50 students in the first year. That's just really inspiring. And also shows the, transformative impact that zero gravity had, especially, starting off as Access Oxbridge right off the back. I think you had the skill set, but also the vision to create something that could truly change how we see the educational system and how we see opportunities as a whole. Also, I wanted to ask you, has the mission and vision of zero gravity changed since its inception
I
or
think
evolved in a way?
the why behind what we do has always stayed the same. So I always knew that talent is everywhere. It's just opportunity is not. And I wanted to change that. So that kind of why, why are we doing this in the first place? Why do I get up in the morning? That has stayed constant throughout the entire journey. I think what has changed is the kind of what. As I mentioned, the what at the beginning was just getting people into Oxford and Cambridge and building technology that did that. And indeed, the technology that we built in the first 18 months was very focused on one-to-one mentoring relations. That was the main mechanism we had for improving people's chances of getting into university. But over time, the what behind the business has changed. We've expanded beyond Oxford and Cambridge to support students into all the UK's top universities. And as you mentioned, over 8,000 students now. And also we've looked beyond getting students into higher education to also look at the career space as well, breaking students into internships, graduate jobs, and apprenticeships as well as an alternative route to university. So those were things we weren't doing 5 years ago when I first started, but the kind of what behind the business expanded over time. And I think that's a natural progression that all organizations should go on. I think a lot of entrepreneurs make the mistake of trying to do too much too early. And the risk is if you do that, that you kind of half-ass everything and full-ass nothing. And it's far better to focus on doing something really, really well, proving out a concept, getting proper deep insights from it, and then expanding to more things than doing a lot of things badly. So that's a journey I've been on. Started off as a small slice and broadened out over time to the full pie.
No, that's nice advice for future entrepreneurs as well, who are getting into any industry for that matter, to start small, but be consistent in what you're doing and eventually, grow and expand. Oh, great. Okay. So can you tell us about some of the most significant accomplishments that zero gravity has achieved so far? How far have you come since, 5 years ago, let's say?
I still remember when the first ever Zero Gravity member rang me up on the phone at the start of 2019 and told me that she won an offer to Oxford University and kind of what that meant to her personally and her life story. So I think that the biggest achievements are always the most human ones, which is seeing talented people who haven't had opportunity on a plate defy the odds and achieve great things, not only for themselves, but for the next generation as well. I think one of the things which is overlooked is that if you are somebody who's socially mobile and you do get one of these opportunities, you don't just transform your own life, you become a kind of cultural symbol to other people who look up to you, the people in your family, your friends, your school, who see you getting into that opportunity and think, that could be me as well. The kind of cultural ripple effect you get from that, I don't think can be underestimated. So the biggest achievements are always the human ones. And I think moving beyond that, I'm also really proud of the team we've built at Zero Gravity as well. The first 12 months of Zero Gravity, I was a one-man band, working out of my childhood bedroom, doing everything by myself. But the truth is, you can't grow and scale an organization without growing and scaling yourself. And there's so many members of the Zero Gravity team who we've hired over the past 3 or 4 years who've been absolutely instrumental in terms of getting the business to where it is today, whether it's the engineers who've built the platform or the product team who've turned my vision into something that actually works and delivers value, whether it's our ops team, striking partnerships with schools, universities, and employers, or the brand team who made Zero Gravity a kind of famous brand that now random people on the street sometimes have heard of. And that is kind of mind blowing for me to sometimes speak to a random person who's got no connection to the business and they've heard of what we're doing. So I think the thing about entrepreneurship is if you're a founder, often you get a lot of the plaudits and a lot of the attention. And that's inevitable. You were the person who sort of turned the business from nothing to something. But you shouldn't forget that any business takes an incredible team to grow, and getting that recruitment right and getting that culture right is absolutely key. Like no one can be a kind of island where they are brilliant themselves but can't get the best out of other people. So one of my key learnings over time was to really spend almost as much time kind of working on the vision of the business and the strategy as working on the people. Hiring, leadership, management, building, finessing that culture. Those are the things that make you successful in the long term. So that's probably what I'm the most proud of as well, the team that we managed to build and the culture that underpins that.
Oh, wow. People and team. That's really great to hear. Zero Gravity is all about bringing low income backgrounds to like elite universities and schools, right? And that has a lot of challenges, let's say, because the cultural and socio-economic barriers often hinder many from gaining that extracurricular activities as well, which is like a key decision maker for many university applications. So, how does Zero Gravity navigate these challenges to ensure that there is inclusiveness and participation across the diverse communities in the UK?
You're absolutely right. So it's not all about grades. The academic achievement at school is a big factor in terms of who goes to university and who doesn't, and who succeeds and who doesn't. And academic achievement is deeply linked to socioeconomic background. But that other more intangible stuff around network, culture, extracurriculars is the other piece in the background, which is more difficult to put your finger on because it's more difficult to measure, but is something that really holds people from low opportunity areas back. Like I remember as somebody who went from Morley in West Yorkshire to Oxford, it was like a whole different world going to university. I met people who had been sort of privately educated since the age of 3, had all sorts of incredibly impressive extracurriculars. They'd been to so many countries, and those were just things that I wasn't doing. And like, how can you compete with that? But I think the key to getting around that is two things. I think one is how do you use technology to democratize access to some of those elements, whether it's building a network, being able to get access to different activities, exposure to different ideas and people. Like, how can technology be a democratizer of that? And the second thing is also changing people's perceptions and culture to realize that even if you are somebody from a low opportunity area and you have faced disadvantage, you have faced adversity, also by having that experience, you have built some incredible qualities and behaviors that other people don't necessarily have. So to give you one example, for instance, the number one behavior that most businesses in the UK say that they want from their early stage employees is resilience. And resilience essentially is just a fancy word for, are you somebody who can deal effectively with stress and adversity? Because the truth is, if you're working in a highly competitive industry, you're going to be put under a huge amount of stress and strain, and things are going to go wrong. Things are actually going to go wrong quite regularly. So if you're the sort of person who can bounce back from those adverse situations and you can manage your mentality to get through an ongoing stressful environment, you've got a huge competitive advantage over other people. And I think resilience is something that people from low opportunity areas have in abundance, because resilience is not a academic theory that you can learn through a textbook. If resilience is a quality which is developed a bit like a muscle through training over time. And if you're somebody who has had a tougher journey, you have had to overcome disadvantage and adversity, you've been through the ultimate training program for developing resilience. So I think part of this is also about making people from low opportunity areas realize they have some incredible qualities that other people don't have. And the more you can do to lean into those, and the more you can do to bring those out for universities and employers, the better.
Oh, wow. I think that's also very important for universities and, employers to understand as well the importance of resilience and perseverance. Speaking of that, running an organization that's pretty free of cost for its students comes with its challenges, especially in the financial aspect. So tell us a little bit about the biggest hurdles you faced and how did you overcome them? What strategies did you use at Zero Gravity and personally to overcome those stress?
Well, you've sort of hinted at it there, I suppose, which is like we're a B2C organization. No, we recruit school students and university students directly onto our platform from low opportunity areas, and we try and transform their potential to get them into these top universities and careers. But we do it completely free at the point of use. So we don't charge our members anything, because we never want finance to be a barrier to unlocking your potential. And that's obviously great from a social impact point of view. But from a business point of view, it creates quite a unique model where the social impact we're trying to create is B2C, directly helping individuals. But our business model is B2B. They're working with employers, universities, and the government to enable institutions to level up what they can achieve when it comes to social mobility. So that does create a unique challenge, because you have to do both things at the same time, the B2C and B2B. And I remember in the early days of Zero Gravity, there was lots of people who thought that it would be impossible to make social mobility a good business. But I was absolutely adamant that there was a business model to be created in this space, because I don't think that social mobility is a charitable endeavor. I think there is obviously a side to social mobility that is social, about creating social justice and a society that is fairer, where people are able to succeed on the basis of their merit and their character rather than their background. But I think there's another element as well, which is steadfastly economic, which is businesses, universities, schools all benefit, not just socially, but financially, from having top talent from all backgrounds. And there's a huge swathe of evidence that shows this is the case. Like, for instance, KPMG, who's one of our employer partners, did a huge study on their UK workforce and found that even though they were struggling to get people from low income backgrounds into the firm, and even though people from low income backgrounds progressed slower in their earlier career, KPMG's highest performing senior associates and partners were from socially mobile backgrounds. So their highest fee earners were from those backgrounds. And that creates a real impetus to try and recruit more of those people. Because if you can actually get them into the workforce and support them, they turn out being some of your most lucrative team members. So there's a huge business angle to this as well. And that's why I believe you can create a business model in this sector. And I see that as a good thing and a virtuous thing, rather than something to be controlled or mitigated, because I think having an effective business model is what enables you to scale. There's very few charities that have actually been able to solve the social problem that they set out to try and make better, because it's very difficult to scale an organization without a business model. And I think some of the biggest societal revolutions we've seen have been driven by businesses precisely because having a business model enables you to get scale if it works. And that's why I believe you can create that virtuous circle of social impact and business impact. And that's what we're trying to do at Zero Gravity.
Wow, wow. Now, let us talk a little bit about the educational inequality that persists ubiquitously in a very large scale, that is. Now, drawing from your experience, what systematic changes or policies do you think are essential for creating a more equitable global education system? Do you have any ideas on that?
Yeah, so I've spoken a lot about the UK, but it's worth bearing in mind that social mobility is a big problem, not just in every developed economy, but developing economies as well. And there is a way to measure it. There's a very nerdy measure called the intergenerational elasticity of income, which essentially looks at how much you can predict people's earnings in their lifetime by what their parents made when they were growing up. And in the UK, you essentially find that you can predict 45% of people's earnings from what their parents earned. And what you see is that there are plenty of countries who do a better job than the UK, like similar countries as well. Like France does better, the Netherlands does better, Australia and New Zealand, and in particular, the Scandinavian countries, as per usual, rank really highly on these measures. And I think it's worth reflecting on what do other countries do well that the UK can learn from. And I think there's a couple of things in particular. One key thing, as you mentioned, is the education system. Around 52% of people's earnings essentially is driven by their level of academic attainment alone. So the more you can do to reduce attainment gaps within economies between people who are from high socioeconomic backgrounds and low socioeconomic backgrounds, the better. So that goes back to things like the quality of schooling. Now, there's some incredible state schools in the UK that teach a lot of students from disadvantaged backgrounds that do really well, and there's lots of schools that do really badly. And I think some of the key differences between those schools are things like, do they have a very clear culture? I think culture is so important when it comes to education, and it's kind of the forgotten element. But I think a lot of schools succeed because it becomes almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy that you have high expectations of your students. You teach them from day one that they are destined to succeed rather than destined to fail. You create a culture of accountability, that you don't accept a kind of tyranny of low expectations. And that becomes a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy because students over time know they are less likely to be absent from school, their behavior is better, they work harder, they revise more, they get better grades, and it becomes self-fulfilling because then students get the confidence of feeling like they are somebody who can succeed and they can see the results in front of them. I think the best state schools are ones that focus on culture. I think that's something that goes forgotten a lot of times in the education sector, where people focus on very kind of technical policy debates regarding class sizes, different forms of pedagogy, but culture is so important. I think another thing that's really important is the structure of your education system as well. Not everybody is highly academic. And if you're a country that doesn't have a good technical education system, that is going to be a barrier to social mobility. And the UK, unfortunately, has a very poor technical education system. You compare that to a country like Germany, where technical education is kind of seen on par to an academic education, and there's a clear pathway through that. It's clearly integrated into the schooling system. You've got incredible technical colleges with lots of resources, some of the best teachers directly connected with businesses. Countries that get technical education right tend to be far more socially mobile. So I think that's something that the UK doesn't do well. And I think the third and final thing I'd point to as well is access to the workplace. Again, I said 52% of people's earnings can be predicted by their education, but that leaves 48%, which is driven by other things. And I think what is quite unique about the UK and the US as well is that access to the workplace, to the top jobs, is incredibly difficult, if not impossible, if you're not somebody who has an incredible education and has an incredible amount of prior work experience. And both of those things are often driven by your background. It might sound obvious to us in the UK, but you don't need to have gone to a top university or to have loads of prior work experience to necessarily be an incredible employee. You know, in other European countries, if you kind of make a mistake in your education journey, it's possible to do things that get you back on the track to being able to get into top employment. In the UK and US, if you flunk your exams, if you don't go to a good university, if you don't have any prior work experience, pretty much all the top opportunities completely drop off your radar and are impossible to access. So I think countries like the UK need to do more to make sure they're not creating artificial barriers to opportunities and are doing more to contextualize people's background so they can ensure they're not missing out on talent by being overly restrictive in their recruitment practices. And they're missing out on people whose achievements look really good in context, but might not necessarily look as good as applicants on the CV.
Right, right. So, final question. Do you have a message to all the students that will be listening to this in the future? What advice do you have to help them utilize the opportunities they have and achieve their dream unis and careers?
The most important force in your life is the power of compounding, which is essentially the idea that if you get 1% better every single week, you might not see dramatic results overnight. You won't see them week to week. You might not even see them month to month. But over a long enough time horizon, getting 1% better every week leads to exponential growth. Now, we saw this with COVID. This idea is now quite easy to communicate because COVID is a disease. If it spreads just 1% more every week, can suddenly infect the entire population over a kind of 6 month period. And that power of compounding is the kind of most fundamental law in your life, because the way to succeed, in my view, is not through kind of trying to game the system or cheat codes. It's getting on that 1% journey of, are you getting 1% better every week? I mean, are you persevering for a long enough time interval that allows you to get that exponential growth? Now, zero gravity is not an overnight success. I spent many weeks in my bedroom building the business, thinking that this was just too difficult, too tough. I thought, no, this idea is not going to take off. But by just committing myself to incrementally every week getting that 1% better and staying in the game long enough allowed me to achieve transformational impact over time. So, to use the old cliche, people massively overestimate what they can achieve in the short run, but they radically underestimate what they can achieve in the long run. So that power of compounding is the key driving force of your life. Stay in the game long enough, stay consistent, get 1% better every week. That's what you got to do, in short.
Oh my God, that was absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Joe Seddon, and hopefully we can continue what Zero Gravity does to the future and expand its operations to countries outside of the UK as well. Yeah,
Awesome. Hopefully one day.
hopefully one day. Thank you so much once again. It was great talking to you.
Great. You too, Helen.